On May 31st, 1930, a boy named Clint Eastwood was born in San Francisco, a time when America was deep in the Great Depression. While millions of families were fighting to stay afloat, Clint's family had nothing stable to hold on to. His father, Clinton Sr., worked factory jobs when he could find them. His mother, Ruth, kept the family together through sheer will. They moved constantly from Sacramento to Oakland, living in more than a dozen towns before Clint was even 10 years old. But here's the part most people don't know. Some nights they didn't have a place to sleep at all. The Eastwoods sometimes slept in their car, parked under streetlights, wrapped in old coats and blankets. Clint was just a kid, but he was already learning how to survive silence, cold, and fear. He once said the walls of their homes were so thin, you could hear everything, especially the sounds that hurt. That early silence became part of him. As a child, he didn't have much control over his life. Schools changed constantly. Friendships didn't last. He was even expelled from one high school for carving drawings into a desk. But what looked like rebellion was really a kid searching for something steady. He found a broken piano in a neighbour's garage and taught himself to play. It became his first sense of control, something he owned that couldn't leave him. Clint later said the old piano was the only thing that made the cold feel smaller. By age 15, Clint Eastwood already knew what most people don't learn until much later, that love doesn't always last, that security can vanish overnight, and that silence can be safer than speaking up. These lessons didn't break him, they built him. The way he walked, the way he looked at people, even the way he acted in films. It all came from those early days when he learned to endure. Let's fast forward to 1951, when Clint was just 21 and serving in the US Army at Fort Ord, California. He wasn't famous yet. He wasn't even trying to act. He was working as a swimming instructor and trying to figure out what came next. That's when a flight he boarded, a simple ride up the Pacific coast, changed everything. The Navy plane he was on crashed into the freezing Pacific Ocean off the coast of Point Reyes. What happened next reads like something out of a movie. Clint swam more than 2 miles in the dark ocean with no lights, no rescue, and no help. He didn't think about distance, he only thought about surviving one breath at a time. By the time he pulled himself onto the rocky shore, half frozen and barely conscious, his life had already been transformed. He later said, "I realised how fast life could be taken away. I didn't want to waste a minute after that. That one night in the ocean shaped his entire future. It's why he moved fast on film sets. It's why he never wasted time with drama or delays. That crash taught him that every second matters, and that building something lasting was more important than chasing attention. From that point forward, Clint Eastwood didn't just survive, he started building an empire, one decision at a time. After surviving that crash, Clint Eastwood didn't run toward fame. He drifted into it, quietly. In the early 1950s, he arrived in Los Angeles with no formal training, no big connections, and barely enough money to afford rent. Some nights, he slept in his car with one blanket and half a sandwich. Hollywood was full of dreamers just like him. But while others tried to charm their way into roles, Clint waited and watched. He wasn't loud, but he didn't go unnoticed for long. In 1959, he landed a small role in a TV show called Rawhide. It wasn't meant to be life-changing, but viewers couldn't stop watching him. He didn't speak much, but when he did, every word felt important. That silence, once a burden from his childhood, had become a powerful tool. By the second season, he wasn't just the sidekick, he was the main attraction. Then came the role that changed everything. In the mid-1960s, a director from Italy named Sergio Leone offered Clint a strange part in a low-budget western. The character barely spoke. The script was thin. Most actors would have passed on it. But Clint saw something familiar in that quiet cowboy. He took the part, and A Fistful of Dollars became a surprise hit. It earned over $20 million, turning Clint Eastwood into an international star. That role was followed by 2 more westerns, For a Few Dollars More, and The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Together, they created the legendary Man with No Name trilogy. Clint's half-shadowed face and silent stare became symbols of strength and mystery across the world. But here's what made him different. Even as the fame rolled in, Clint stayed grounded. He didn't chase red carpets or party scenes. Instead, he studied how films were made. He spent more time with the crew than the celebrities, and quietly, he started planning something bigger. By the early 1970s, he was tired of being told what to do, tired of scripts he didn't like, tired of waiting for someone else to say yes. So, with his own money and a few close friends, Clint started his own production company, Malpaso Productions. The goal wasn't to become rich, it was to take control. His first film as a director was Play Misty for Me in 1971. It wasn't flashy or action-packed. It was slow, tense, and deeply personal. A story about obsession and fear. Some critics didn't like it. Clint didn't care. What mattered was that it was his. No one had to approve it. No one had to tell him how to do it. That freedom was priceless. Let's take a moment to pause here. Because this is where Clint Eastwood quietly shifted from being an actor to becoming a force. Over the next 2 decades, he directed and starred in films that pushed boundaries and won awards. But more importantly, he ran his sets with calm efficiency. He never yelled. He didn't waste money. Crews respected him because he respected them. "Time is expensive," he once said, "and I don't intend to waste either." By 1992, everything changed again. His film Unforgiven stripped the Western of all its romance. It was raw, honest, and painful. The Academy Awards gave Clint 2 Oscars for it, Best Director and Best Picture. But he didn't celebrate with fireworks, he just moved on to the next project, because for him, awards weren't the goal, ownership was. Clint kept working. Films like $1 Million Baby made $216 million worldwide. Gran Torino brought in $270 million. All the profits helped him build something even more lasting, a quiet empire. By the late 1990s, Clint Eastwood was more than just a Hollywood legend. He was a builder, not just of films, but of land, homes, and legacies. While other stars bought flashy mansions and private jets, Clint invested in properties that told a story. He wasn't chasing headlines, he was building permanence. Let's start with the Mission Ranch Inn in Carmel by the Sea. Back in the 1980s, the place was falling apart. Just another old structure waiting to be demolished. But Clint saw history in the walls. He bought it with his own money and restored every part of it himself. Today, the 22-acre property includes charming cottages, a piano bar, a restaurant, and sweeping views of sheep grazing in green fields with the Pacific Ocean just beyond. This wasn't just real estate, it was Clint bringing something back to life, something that could last beyond him. And that was just the beginning. Higher up in the hills of Monterey County, he developed the Tehama Golf Club, a private retreat built for privacy, peace, and nature. It stretches across 2,000 acres of wilderness, blending modern design with untouched California landscape. Unlike other luxury clubs, Tehama isn't about showing off, it's about escaping. It became Clint's sanctuary where the noise of the world couldn't reach him. He also owns multiple homes, each with its own meaning. A mansion in Bel Air purchased in the 1990s, quiet, timeless, and mostly hidden from public view. A getaway in Sun Valley, Idaho, where he's been known to retreat during the winter, surrounded by snow-covered trees and calm silence. His Rising River Ranch in Northern California hosted fishing trips, family barbecues, and quiet afternoons. And a more recent property in Maui, where neighbours say he's often seen reading screenplays at sunrise with a coffee in hand. But here's what's interesting. None of these homes are flashy. No gold gates, no fleets of exotic cars. His collection includes a few classic vehicles, like a Gran Torino he restored himself and a vintage Porsche 911. For Clint, it was never about showing off, it was about preserving the things that mattered. Even his travel habits are different. He doesn't own a private jet. He prefers charter flights. No massive yachts, though he occasionally sails off the California coast with old friends. His money doesn't scream, it just stands still, like the man who earned it. Now here's the part that really shows his mindset. Clint Eastwood's estimated net worth of over $400 million isn't tied up in flashy businesses or risky ventures. It's grounded, it's in property, land, and self-funded films. When others were investing in fame, he was investing in permanence. "I moved my whole life," he once said. "Now I build things that stay." But behind all that success was a much more complicated personal story. Because while Clint built homes that could last for generations, his own family life was scattered, split across time, partners, and geography. Let's take a closer look at that next. Because the fortune Clint Eastwood built wasn't just financial, it also came with a personal cost that no amount of money could fix. While Clint Eastwood built a reputation for strength and control on screen, behind the scenes, his personal life was often anything but stable. He has 8 children by 6 different women, a fact that might surprise fans who only know him as the quiet cowboy or hardened detective. But Clint's family story is layered, and in some places, painful. Let's go back to the beginning. In 1953, when Clint was still struggling to make a name for himself, he met Maggie Johnson, a smart and grounded woman who became his first wife. They met on a blind date and clicked instantly. She supported him when Hollywood didn't. When money was tight, she ironed his shirts, packed his lunch, and believed in his dream. Their first apartment had 1 blanket and smelled like wet paint. It was the kind of beginning most stars forget. But Clint never did. Their marriage lasted over 30 years, and they had 2 children. Kyle, born in 1968, who would go on to become a respected jazz musician, and Allison, born in 1972, who followed her father into the film world as an actress and director. But even while this family was growing, Clint's personal life was already branching off in other directions. Here's where the cracks began to show. While married to Maggie, Clint had a long relationship with Roxanne Tunis, an actress and dancer. Together, they had a daughter named Kimber in 1964, years before Clint's other children were born. Maggie reportedly knew but chose to stay, raising her own children quietly as Clint's fame skyrocketed. But the quiet didn't last. As the 1970s unfolded, Clint's name began to appear in more than just movie headlines. There were whispers of affairs, of other children, of families that barely knew each other, and in many cases, those whispers were true. Scott Eastwood, now a well-known actor himself, was born in 1986 to Jocelyn Reeves, a flight attendant. His sister Catherine also came from that same relationship. There was also Francesca, born in 1993 to actress Frances Fisher, Clint's co-star in Unforgiven, and Morgan, born in 1996 to his second wife, Dina Ruiz, a TV anchor who stayed with him until their separation in 2013. But even before all these well-known names came to light, there was one more daughter, Laurie Murray, born in the 1950s and placed for adoption. She reconnected with Clint later in life, quietly and without headlines. Now, here's the emotional part. Many of these children didn't grow up together. Some didn't even know they were related until adulthood. Some were raised by single mothers. Others only learned the truth after seeing a familiar face on screen. And while Clint supported many of them financially, emotional closeness was a different story. Clint himself admitted, "Being known doesn't mean being understood." That quote wasn't for the press. It was likely meant for the children he rarely saw, the ones whose birthdays came and went without a call. But things started to shift as Clint grew older. In the last decade, he's made more of an effort to bring his children closer. Photos began to appear, Clint standing next to Scott at a movie premiere, hugging Allison at a charity event, listening quietly as Kyle performed jazz in his honor. These weren't just publicity shots. They were small signs of something more fragile, a quiet attempt at reconnection. It's important to say this clearly. None of his children have spoken with bitterness. They describe their father as distant, private, but not cruel. Some say they've had to earn his respect. Others say they understand him more now that they're older. But what's clear is this: while Clint built properties that stood firm against the wind, his relationships were not always as solid. One of the most complicated and emotional chapters in Clint Eastwood's life revolves around his long relationship with actress Sondra Locke. They met in 1972 on the set of The Outlaw Josie Wales. At the time, Clint was still married to Maggie Johnson, and Sondra was also in a troubled marriage. But the connection between Clint and Sondra wasn't just professional. It became deeply personal and eventually painful. Their relationship lasted 14 years, through films, fame, and quiet battles behind the scenes. Movies like The Gauntlet, Bronco Billy, and Sudden Impact weren't just performances. They were snapshots of a real couple trying to hold their life together under the pressure of public attention and private heartbreak. But there were signs of trouble early on. Clint, always used to having control, took that same approach in their relationship. He financed Sondra's projects, helped guide her acting career, and even bought her a home. But what seemed like generosity slowly began to feel like control. Sondra later admitted that Clint was afraid of losing her, but even more afraid of letting her be fully independent. The most painful part of their story came in silence. During their time together, Sondra experienced 2 pregnancies that ended before birth. She later said these weren't just medical experiences, they were personal losses that deeply affected her view of their future. Clint didn't speak publicly about them, but those close to him say it was one of the few times he seemed shaken. Eventually, Clint moved on, quietly. In the late 1980s, he began a relationship with Frances Fisher, which led to the birth of his daughter Francesca. Sondra found out not from Clint, but from the press. For her, it felt like betrayal on top of heartbreak. She filed a lawsuit, not for revenge or headlines, but for recognition. She claimed Clint had limited her career opportunities and kept her from directing projects after their breakup. The lawsuit was settled privately, without trial, but even after it ended, the emotional damage lingered. In interviews, Sondra spoke softly about Clint, often saying she still loved him, but that she never got the apology she was hoping for. When she passed away in 2018, Clint said nothing, no statement, no tribute, just silence. But those close to him said that silence wasn't cold, it was grief, a deep, private kind that Clint had no words for. And here's something that speaks volumes. After her death, Clint was seen spending more time alone at his Carmel estate. One crew member who visited said the piano he used to play daily sat untouched. A bottle of her favourite coffee sat unopened in the kitchen. Her laughter still seemed to echo in the hallways. This wasn't just a lost relationship. It was a moment where Clint Eastwood had to face a truth he couldn't outwork or outbuild. That love, once gone, leaves behind a silence louder than applause. And for a man who made his career through quiet strength, this silence was the one thing he couldn't master. Let's move ahead to the next chapter, one that brought him a kind of peace later in life, but also another heartbreaking loss that reminded him just how fragile everything really is. In the quiet later years of his life, Clint Eastwood seemed to finally step away from the chaos of Hollywood, the headlines and the heartbreak. He found a kind of peace, not through fame, but through someone the public barely knew. Her name was Christina Sandera, and she wasn't an actress or someone from the spotlight. She worked as a restaurant hostess at Mission Ranch Inn, the very property Clint had lovingly restored decades earlier. Their connection was simple and quiet. They met in the early 2000s, and by 2014, Christina had moved into Clint's home. She didn't want his fame. She didn't ask for red carpets. What she brought was something Clint had been missing for most of his life: stillness. Neighbours said she cooked him meals, walked with him along the beach, and laughed at his old piano tunes. For once, the house felt alive, not with noise, but with peace. Clint himself admitted something rare. In a private moment, he said, "With her, I finally stopped chasing ghosts." That sentence carried more weight than most headlines. After decades of broken relationships, scattered children, and emotional distance, Clint had found someone who didn't want to change him, just to sit beside him. But peace, as Clint had learned many times, can be fragile. On July 18th, 2024, Christina Sandera passed away suddenly at age 61 due to cardiac complications. There were no front-page tributes, no televised memorials, just silence, the kind Clint Eastwood had spent a lifetime both mastering and dreading. Only one sentence came from him publicly: "Christina was a lovely, caring woman, and I will miss her very much." That short statement was the only thing released through a family spokesperson, but behind those few words was a much deeper grief. Friends noticed the change immediately. Clint stopped playing piano. The garden went untouched. The blinds at his Carmel home stayed closed longer each day. At Christina's private service, Clint stood quietly near the front, wearing all black. He didn't speak, but as the ceremony ended, he rested one hand on her urn, and whispered something only he could hear. That moment said everything. A man who had survived a plane crash, outlived scandal, and built an empire of strength was now facing the one thing that had always undone him: loss. Not the loud kind, the quiet, personal kind that changes how you move through a house, how you sit in a chair, how you remember where someone left their scarf. Christina wasn't just a partner. She had become the rhythm of Clint's daily life, the one who softened his edges without ever asking him to change. Her passing didn't just take away companionship, it took away the only sanctuary he had known in years. This is what made it even more heartbreaking. Christina never sought public attention. She wasn't married to Clint, she rarely appeared in photos, but to him, she was something more than all of that. She was his peace. And now, once again, Clint Eastwood was left alone. In the same house that overlooks the Pacific Ocean he once swam across to save his life, he sat surrounded by silence, not the strength of silence, but the sorrow of it. Let's now look at the legacy Clint Eastwood worked so hard to preserve, because for all the heartbreak, loss and emotional distance, he made sure that what he built could endure far beyond him, and for better or worse, that legacy is now in the hands of his family. Now in his 90s, Clint Eastwood isn't just remembered for the films he made, he's remembered for what he built. Unlike many celebrities, Clint didn't spend money on image or status, he used it to create something real, something permanent. His fortune, valued at over $400 million, is more than just a number. It's the result of careful decisions, relentless work, and a deep desire to never feel powerless again. Let's break it down. The Mission Ranch Inn in Carmel isn't just a hotel, it's a symbol. A forgotten piece of land that Clint brought back to life, turning it into a peaceful retreat where the ocean breeze meets green fields. He still walks its paths at dawn. Not because he has to, but because it reminds him of the boy he used to be, the one who once had nothing and now owns every inch of the ground beneath his feet. Then there's the Tehama Golf Club, a massive 2,000-acre spread tucked into the hills above Monterey. Clint built it for privacy and peace, not for spectacle. Membership is selective, the architecture blends into the land, and the goal isn't to impress, it's to breathe. This is where Clint escapes. No cameras, no press, just sky and silence. He also holds properties across the US, including a Bel Air home, a Sun Valley retreat in Idaho, a Northern California ranch, and a beachfront home in Maui. Each one is simple but meaningful. He didn't buy properties to show off. He bought them to build stability, and each of these places holds pieces of his life. Family dinners, fishing trips, quiet afternoons at the piano. Even his vehicle collection reflects his values. A restored Gran Torino, a Porsche 911, and a vintage Lincoln. No flashy sports cars, no gold-plated emblems, just timeless machines built with care, just like Clint's films. But there's another side to his legacy, one that goes beyond real estate. Clint has quietly given millions to causes he believes in, including veteran organizations, arts education, and environmental conservation. He doesn't run a flashy foundation. He doesn't name buildings after himself. Most of his donations are anonymous. One friend said, "If you have more than you need, Clint believes you owe it to the world to leave it better than you found it." And he's made sure his fortune won't tear his family apart. Over the years, Clint has placed much of his wealth into private trusts designed to reduce conflict between his children. These trusts protect the properties and earnings, while also dividing assets fairly. For a man whose family life was often scattered, this was his way of creating peace where there used to be distance. But not everything is written in numbers. His children, Kyle, Allison, Kimber, Scott, Catherine, Francesca, Morgan, and Laurie, each represent a different part of his life, different mothers, different upbringings, different paths, and yet they all share one thing in common, a connection to a man who spent most of his life learning how to be still. Photos from recent years tell the real story. Clint standing next to Kyle during a jazz performance. A rare smile with Allison at a film screening. Scott attending premieres with his father. These aren't just staged moments, they're the slow steps of a father trying to be present, maybe not in the way others might have done it, but in the only way he knew how. Let's close in on what all of this means. because Clint Eastwood's greatest legacy might not be the awards or the films. It might be the way he turned silence into survival, and survival into something that lasts. The story of Clint Eastwood isn't just about what he gained, it's about what he lost along the way. His fortune may be solid, but it was built on a foundation of motion, solitude, and sacrifice. For all his land, homes, and success, he still walks through hallways that echo with absence. Let's go back to the earliest lesson he carried. As a child, Clint never had control. The constant moving, the empty dinners, the quiet tension in his parents' home, all of that taught him one thing: build something no one can take from you. And that's exactly what he did. Property by property, film by film, legacy by legacy. But that discipline came with a cost. For decades, Clint was emotionally distant, not out of cruelty, but habit. Some of his children didn't meet him until they were adults. Others knew him only through brief moments and phone calls. And while none speak with hate, there's a quiet recognition in their voices that time can't be rewound. You don't get to redo a childhood, you only get the now. Clint Eastwood once joked, "You can only be young once, but you can be immature forever." It was funny, but behind it was a truth he rarely admitted, that showing up wasn't always his strength. He gave the world some of cinema's most powerful father figures, but at home, being a dad was something he had to learn late, and sometimes too late. Still, there's something remarkable about his later years. Friends and family say he's gentler now, he listens more, he's slower to criticize. He spends quiet evenings walking his properties, looking out over the ocean that almost took him once, thinking about what remains. At 94 years old, Clint Eastwood is still standing, not because he chased perfection, but because he endured. And in a world full of noise, his life reminds us that sometimes the strongest thing a person can do is stay still. He stayed long enough for the others to quit. He worked long after the spotlight faded, and he built something that didn't just sparkle, but lasted. Today, those close to him describe a man who has finally made peace with the silence. Not the kind that hurts, but the kind that reminds you of who you are. He still lives at Mission Ranch, surrounded by sheep pastures and sea breeze. He rises early. He plays the piano sometimes. He answers the phone himself. There are no entourages, no loud visitors, just the steady hum of a life that has seen every kind of storm and chose to plant roots anyway. The same man who once swam through freezing black water in the Pacific now walks calmly along that same coast, holding memories only he understands. And in that final truth lies his legacy. The homes will remain, the films will play on, the fortune will pass hands. But the life behind it, the boy in the back seat, the man in the ocean, the father who tried, will echo long after the spotlight fades. Because Clint Eastwood didn't just leave behind money, he left behind a story. A long, complicated, deeply human story of survival, silence, and the hard-earned grace of someone who never stopped trying to build something that couldn't be taken away. There's a reason why Clint Eastwood's story feels so different from other Hollywood legends. It's not because he won more awards, or made more money, or even stayed relevant for over 70 years. It's because through all the success, he never stopped being the same man he was as a boy. Watchful, quiet, and determined not to disappear. Even now, his routines remain unchanged. He walks without security. He answers his door. He makes his own coffee. And at least once a week, he walks through Mission Ranch, looking over the same land he rescued from being turned into condos. It's not a stage, it's home, his home, the one he finally got to choose. But the echoes still follow him. In the corner of the room sits the piano where he used to play for Christina Sandera. Her scarf still folded on the chair, her glasses still resting by the window. Clint doesn't move them, he lets them stay, because in his world, leaving something untouched is how he holds on. It's the same with his children. In recent years, he's made more time for them, not through grand gestures, but through presence. A quiet dinner, a soft laugh, a walk through the garden. It's not redemption in the dramatic sense, it's something more fragile, the kind of healing that only happens when everyone stops expecting perfection. His children too carry pieces of him. Kyle, with his deep understanding of music, Scott, who mirrors his father's gaze and discipline, Allison, who tells stories through directing, Morgan, who brings calm like her mother once did, and even Laurie, the daughter given up for adoption, now found, who said meeting him wasn't about anger, it was about connection. They each understand a different version of the man. Not the myth, not the movie star, but the person. And Clint Eastwood knows time is no longer on his side. At this stage in life, he isn't planning for more movies or new roles. He's focused on what will remain. His properties are held in carefully structured trusts, not just to protect value, but to protect peace. His will reflects clarity, fairness, and the hope that his family will be closer, not further apart, because of what he's left behind. Still, there's one thing that can't be written into any legal document: memory. And that's where Clint's real legacy lives. In every frame of Unforgiven. In every note of jazz played by Kyle. In every child who walks through the halls of Mission Ranch. In the breeze off the Pacific that once nearly ended his life, but now carries the weight of everything he survived. So when people ask what Clint Eastwood is leaving behind, the answer isn't just money or land or fame. It's the full picture of a life that started with nothing but silence and turned it into something unshakable. Clint Eastwood once said, "I never liked waste, but I like things that last." And after all the noise fades, what remains is exactly that: a life that lasted, a story that mattered, and a man who, through every storm, built something that stayed.